Today, I would like to demonstrate a SUMIFS function. I would like to use this function to tally up total values of quoted and approved based on specified criteria that I've listed here. I want to see the value of quoted for today. I want to see of the quoted what was approved today. Here, I want to see the same for the specific week that today is in, which is week 48 of the year. Then I want to see what the standing is for November so far and what the standing for the entire year is from January to the 24th of November. So these are the values I want to total up. To put in these values, I need for each of these calculations different numbers of criteria ranges. Now, the reason why the criteria ranges are important and the number of criteria ranges are important is this is going to identify or indicate to you whether or not you should use a SUMIF function or a SUMIFS function. Now, I have indicated a description here to help explain the difference between the two. The main difference is the SUMIF function is considering only one set of criteria, where the SUMIF function is considering multiple. This will also mean that the actual structure of the formula will change slightly between the two. The SUMIF function will consider the criteria range first, then the criteria, and then the sum range. The SUMIFS function will consider the range first, the sum range first, and then the criterias, because it's the number of criterias that you can have is basically endless. So the sum range will be first, and then you'll go to criteria range, then criteria, and then so on and so on. That will just repeat. So I'm going to start with identifying the value of quoted for the year 2022, and then I'm going to create my formula or set it up in a way where I can copy it over to the approved without having to retype the formula again. I'm starting off with these formulas first because it's considering the least amount of criterias within the formula. So I'm going to open up my formula, which is an equal sign, and then I'm going to type SUMIFS. Again, I'm using more than one set of criteria, which is why I'm using the SUMIFS function and not the SUMIF. So the first thing I need to highlight is my sum range, which is the value in which it's going to be totaling, which is this column D. Then I'm going to use the comma as a separator and put in my first criteria range. My first criteria range, I wanted to look for quoted in this column. So I'm going to highlight my criteria range, use a comma as a separator, and now I need to indicate to the formula what criteria to look for or to consider. And it is only going to be considering the criteria as quoted. And I'm going to indicate use my separator again, which is the comma sign, and I'm going to highlight my next criteria range, which is the year. I'm going to use a separator again, and then I'm going to go and select my criteria that my formula needs to find. I'm going to close brackets. Before I press enter, I want to fix portions of this formula so that I can again copy it over from the cell in which I'm typing it to the cell to the right of it without having to retype the formula. And the only part of the formula that would change is this C1 from quoted would have to move over to D1 automatically. So I'm going to fix all the portions of my formula except this C1. So I'm going to add these little icons to my formulas in front of the column and in front of the row. That will fix my formulas. And now I will press enter. It has added up the value, and if I go and copy this over and put it over there, you can see how the values are different. If I press enter just to check the structure of the formulas, yeah, I can see that this specific cell has moved over to the right one for this cell. So it is telling up the total approved. Great, so I've completed the first one of two criteria. Now I'm going to repeat this again, but I'm going to add in a third criteria, which is the month. So I'm going to open up my formula, highlight my sum range, add the separator. I'm going to highlight my first criteria range. So first criteria, then second criteria range, second criteria, because again, I'm looking for everything in November for the year 2022. Then I'm going to add my third criteria range, which is now the new one, which is this month column. And I'm going to select my third criteria, which is month 11, and I'm going to close brackets. Again, I want to be able to copy this formula over from column C to column D, and I want the only thing to change to be C1 needs to change to D1. So I'm going to fix everything else other than that specific section of the formula. And I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to copy that over, and you can see how it's adjusted slightly. Next, I'm going to add in a fourth layer of criteria to my next formula, and I'm going to press start my formula with the SUMIFS function again, and I'm going to basically repeat all these functions again, all these sections. So sum range first, then criteria range, criteria range 2, and then my third criteria range is I want it to be part of the 11th month again. And now my fourth criteria is the week. It needs to only tie the value to the cell if it is found in week 48. And I'm going to close my brackets. Again, exact same thing. The only thing I don't want to fix is cell C1. Everything else can be fixed. So I'm just fixing all these formulas so that they stay in position. And there we go. So in this instance, we don't have anything from the current week. So everything for our month of November relates to other weeks within the month of November. Next, I want to go see if anything is from today. So this formula is basically the exact same as the one below. It's just considering a different criteria range for its final criteria, and it's considering the day, not the week. So I'm going to show an example of how I can take an existing formula and just adjust it slightly so that it considers the day instead of the week. So if you look at the formula, I need this week, which is cell F, to move over to E, or column F to column E. So I'm going to find my column F here, and I'm going to replace the F with the E. And the next thing is, for this day, the criteria range that's 48, which is found here, is linked to this criteria range that I've moved. It's B3, and I needed to look at B2. And then again, I'm just going to copy this over. I've already fixed it, and there we go. I've got my values.